I'm just going to call the roll. I'm here. Stephanie Barnes cannot make it. Gretchen was unavailable. Bonnie Zong Griffith.
Yes, I'm here.
Gina Lyon can't make it. Randy B. Funk couldn't make it. Jessica Peters.
Hi, I'm here.
Jennifer Sullivan.
Present.
Jay Wilson.
Here.
And Genesis Milam may or may not be able to join. So with a quorum, we need to, before we adopt the agenda, can I ask that that there be an agenda, we need to amend the agenda to add an agenda item called West Ada framed traffic box discussion. We need to add that to the agenda. So we need a motion to amend the agenda.
I motion to amend the agenda.
Seconded.
So we are making the motion to amend the agenda to add West Ada framed traffic box discussion. Are we all right there, or do they need to state that, or can they say so moved?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
The motion could maybe be amended to say to adopt the agenda as amended.
Okay.
If that's amenable.
I
Great.
move to amend the agenda to adopt the West Ada framed traffic box item to the agenda.
Good,
I didn't
that's
say that
okay.
correctly, did I?
And adopt that agenda. Yeah.
So do you want to feed it to me, or was that good enough?
That was good enough.
Okay.
I think we get the gist.
Okay, so I move.
So moved. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. And let the record reflect that Genesis Milam has joined us via conference call. So we just amended the agenda. We're going to start. Can we start with that item? Or do we have the information that we need to start with that item, or should we do it after Dairy Days?
It is your call, Madam Chair.
I think we should start with that then. We're going to start with the amended item, the West Ada framed. Hillary?
Okay, so really quickly, I've been in communications with the coordinator for this year's West Ada Frames Art Show. We have gotten into a little bit of discussion about how this works. So last year we did, the Arts Commission always does 3 Best of awards. So it's Best of Elementary, Best of Middle School, Best of High School. But last year when we went, I forgot that they did this, but they asked us to also do, recognize someone for intermediate elementary school, in addition to primary elementary school, middle school, and then a high school 3D, 2D, and photography. So I have a new proposal for you guys to consider for how we do this for this year. So my proposal, since MAC is responsible this year for the traffic box art wraps, and MDC isn't partnering with us on that this year. If you recall the conversation that Mary had when we were doing this budget discussion, she suggested that we maintain wrapping student traffic box art from West Ada School District, even though we didn't ask for that partnership money from MDC. We asked them for partnership money for the mural instead of for traffic box art. So the commission decided to continue to support the traffic box art wraps. So my proposal is that on always those traffic box wraps through West Ada were awarded $50 for the use of their artwork, and in addition to wrapping their art on a box. So my proposal is that we move forward with the 6 categories that West Ada had outlined for us last year, which is primary, elementary, elementary intermediate, middle, high school 2D, high school 3D, high school photo, and make those also the same recommendations for traffic box art wraps as well. The only exception to this as far as award goes is that we can't wrap a 3D piece. So my suggestion would be to MAC to use $50 from their budget that currently is at $150 for the Best of 3D award, and then all of the other awards would be the same at $50 coming from that traffic box line item, so that all of those students are treated the same as the previous traffic box art wraps have been treated. And that would give you your 5 traffic box wraps plus recognizing a 3D student.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Genesis.
Hillary, we on the phone can't really understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Bring the phone over by you for this.
It's not just me, so it's your other conference calls as well. So I don't know if maybe speaking closer to the microphone would help. I'm gonna be over there before this meeting's over. I'm on my way, but anyway, people aren't able to hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay, shoot. But can you stand here?
I'll sit here.
Yeah, sit here.
Genesis,
She's going to
can
sit by
you hear
me.
now?
Much better.
Oh.
Okay. And Gretchen, are you still there?
I am. Yes. I thought Genesis was there. I was texting her. I couldn't hear.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
Oh, and also I didn't realize that Stephanie Barnes in the roll call can let the record reflect that Stephanie Barnes is also available via conference.
Stephanie Barnes is my
I mean,
conference.
Gretchen Casarati, sorry.
Yes.
Gretchen, is that you?
It's Gretchen.
Yes.
It's Gretchen. Okay.
So my proposal is that that MAC use the West Ada Art Show, 6 categories that were suggested by West Ada last year. So that includes primary elementary, intermediate elementary, middle school, high school 2D, high school photo, and high school 3D, and that all except for the 3D are also used as traffic box wraps as well. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
instead of selecting 3 best ofs and then 5 additional traffic box wraps, but then not wrapping one of our best ofs, that we make them all the same. So the only one that wouldn't be wrapped would be 3D, but they would all be awarded $50.
Okay.
Does that?
I think that really
Yeah.
streamlines the process and makes sense because we're choosing to award those artists. So that makes, it's much more contiguous. It treats everyone fairly and equally and gets us some great art for the traffic box wraps. I love that idea.
So
Thank
6
you.
times 5 is what, 30?
3,
So 300?
300, uh-huh.
So your motion would be to approve not to exceed $300 for West Ada Student Art Show Awards.
Okay, and that's a change from the 150 that we had before, is that?
More or less, so you guys had 150
Mm-hmm.
from, for those Best of Awards, but you also were going to award $50 to any traffic box wrap student. So it
So
kind
that's
of
more,
evens out.
that's more contiguous too, as far as that's less confusing and more, yay. Good, I love less confusing.
Yes.
Okay, so is everyone, could both of our people on the phone, Gretchen and Genesis, could you both hear what
Yes.
Hillary is proposing? Commission, it now is up to us to decide whether or not, and to make a motion to approve that plan and going with a not-to-exceed amount for $300 into our budget for those student awards.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the plan to not exceed $300 for the West Ada Student Art Awards for 2018.
And that we wrap the boxes. Can we make that all in one motion, Emily? Is that okay? All right. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you, Hillary.
Yeah. Should I stand here for the other ones?
Why don't you just sit by me?
I've got to control this.
Oh, she has to control the computer. You want to bring this?
That was a long sentence. That she can't hear you,
Oh, okay.
so I wanted you to be heard since you're the chair.
All right, well, I'll just bring it back and forth. So, moving on from that to the mural mill design. And I'm sure we're going to see this up on are we going to see this on our screens?
Are they not up?
Nope. Mine isn't. Maybe I'm just not logged in here. There we go. There it is. Okay, so this has been,
Oh, wow.
yeah, this is so pretty. This has been a process that we've been wanting to, it's to cover the side of the old Zamzo's building. And the family has been very involved with this process, and it's been amazing. They've been so supportive of having a mural, and this is reflective of the history of our area, and certainly the history of Zamzo's in the area. And I understand that they have approved this design. Is that correct? The family?
Those has approved the design. So since that approval of design, Sector 17 made 2 color options to show you kind of what they were planning for color. I've sent them an email asking for some clarification on here, but essentially today what we're looking for of the Arts Commission is to approve the design so that it could move forward. And then if you'd like to authorize a commissioner to work with the artists and the family on the color, we could do that.
Great. That sounds, have you, Genesis and Gretchen, have you been able to both look at this online? I know Hillary had sent one. This has got, what it's added here is there's a diagonal color splashes that look kind of like a multicolored sunburst a little bit across the page, and they've got some different options. And there's one that's more cubic in form, where you've got a little bit of cubism coming into the picture with different shards of color. It's really quite beautiful. But all we would be approving...
Madam Chair, yes, Hillary sent those to us.
Okay.
And I like the color scheme. My personal preference is the second one with a more simplified and fewer prisms because of it being on the wall and less busy to look at if you're driving.
Okay, yeah, I like that. And I understand that today we're only approving the design itself. And then we'll be working with different color options. But yeah.
Correct, but it's still valuable feedback.
Absolutely.
I will add to, sorry, Madam Chair, to take the floor.
Yes,
Hillary. We did hear back from Sector 17. My question to them was, are there going to also be whites? Because this is just shown as an overlay, so I wanted to know about whites and blacks. And they said, yes, whites and blacks would be included, and some other highlights in these color families so that the contrast would be greater on the wall. And then as far as the coverage, I had asked about if they're going to cover the entire surface, because our original budget, paint-wise, only really covered half of the surface, but they said they would cover the entire surface as it's depicted in these images.
With the same budget? Yay, yay. Okay. That cow still makes me laugh, I'm sorry. The cow face is so funny to me, it's so sweet. Anyway, so what we need to do then is we can have a motion on the design itself, and the motion that we're making excludes the choice on the color overlay. It is simply the sketched art.
So Madam Chair.
Did you want to?
Sure.
Jay.
We talked briefly when we met a couple weeks ago that it seemed a little bit like it was lacking, I guess, maybe some of the family appeal with just a single worker with a dog and cat, and then also that you have this central leading line with the road going back to a partial barn, but there's not a real big payoff there, and was my concern. Your eyes kind of drawn mostly to the cow, which is great, but then you follow this road back to a mostly hidden barn, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of payoff in that for me. It's a pretty picture, and I think the scenery will be great, and the color adds something to that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just early on concerns with the non-colorized version that I kind of had. I think we were wondering about the cows too, if they're actually dairy cows, since this is dairy instead of beef cows. But
They look like dairy cows.
Yeah. So I
don't
know the difference.
I wanted you guys to have the opportunity to share, because you brought up the dairy cows in the field. I want you guys have the opportunity to share that insight and perspective on the mural. I did send, after we talked about this, some of those concerns, and then a concern from a council member to Sector 17. Would you like me to read their responses for all of that? Okay. So here, I'm just going to read their bullets. When we were searching for the cow references, we found that there were examples of dairy cows in feeding stalls as well as ones grazing in the open. From an artist's perspective, depicting the cows grazing in a grassy field seems more cohesive with the overall design. And then the next one, the road leading back to the barn area actually cuts sorry, the road leading back to the barn area actually cuts through a small hill, which they most likely saw as the ridge. See attached photo for reference. Obviously, the final painted mural will be much more detailed than this sketch. If need be, we can make the barn silo a bit bigger in relation to the rest of the elements. Also keep in mind that on the wall, all these images will be very large. And then Councilmember Luke Kavanagh also mentioned maybe adding like a child to integrate a family theme. So he suggested a child rather than an additional adult. So Sector 17 said, as far as adding a child, we can do that, but the question may come up as to who the child is in relation to the farmer. As per our last meeting with the Zamzos, the farmer is essentially meant to depict Callie's grandfather. We will leave this one up to Callie's discretion. And then the final point was about the color rendering that they've provided here. So let me show you.
The color rendering there brings out, because of the yellow and the fade of the rose on the cow, it kind of does bring more attention to that barn. Am I broken again here?
Is yours not showing?
No.
There's none of you showing? What? Hold on. Oh, here.
There we go.
There's that barn with the cut in the hill or whatever that they were talking about. So they did say if any of these changes do come about, like wanting to make the barn a little bigger and the silo a little bigger, that they could accommodate that, or adding a child. But some of that will still depend on the Zamzos' input. So if the Zamzos don't want a child, we can't move anywhere without the Zamzos' approval. So they've essentially approved this design as it is. They might be willing to compromise on making the barn and silo larger, but they might not be willing to compromise on the child. So my suggestion, I guess, for moving forward is approving this current design and working with the Zamzos for any further revisions needed.
With the liaison from the Arts Commission, as the same person that will be working on the color blocking could also give some perspective on the additions if the Zamzo family agrees, if Callie agrees with those additions. Does that interest you, Bonnie?
Well, I guess I have some concerns with the design. I mean, it's not a very strong composition where that road goes. I mean, if you look at the photograph, how the road goes off to the side of the barn, but that in the rendering of it, it looks like the road goes right into the barn and sort of dead ends. And I just don't think that's a very good composition.
And talking about the composition could be considered, I mean, part of the color conversation, because that doesn't change. Essentially, the design that we would approve would not be changed by adjusting the angle of that road. This road has a sharp angle, and as I recall, the other one kind of bends around and doesn't make the curve strong enough before it gets to the barn, and it does seem like it goes right into the barn. So adjusting that to be a sharper angle and bringing it down so that it goes by the barn as opposed to like what you're talking about.
You have to be careful, you know, when you get something that takes you right in, it stops you right at a spot like that, and it's going to be huge, you know?
Yeah, it's going to be gigantic. So that could be a simple adjustment that could be made without changing it would change the physical composition of the design, but not what is in the design that Callie has approved. So that would be something we could work with the artists, or that are Sector 17, we could work with them to make that adjustment without needing to reapprove the design, is what I'm saying. That's what I'm working with Hillary, is can we, if the commissioners are in agreement, approve this design today, but knowing that it's going to be amended in these ways as we go forward? Is that doable?
Yes.
Okay. And Bonnie, would you be interested or able to join in that process as we go forward to give them guidance?
I think so. I mean, it just depends on what the time frame is, because I'm going into a busy season, so I'm going to be gone a lot.
Okay.
But
Okay,
I'm here, I certainly will
okay.
do that if I can.
Oh, okay.
I can provide.
Oh, could you provide some support there too, Jay? Okay, great. Let's go. So Jay and Bonnie will work with Sector 17 and Cali to make the adjustments to the design, should it be approved today, having to do with the color overlay as well as the corrections to the composition, the physical composition of the piece. Does that make sense? Okay, knowing that, is there any more input from the commissioners prior to making a motion?
So when will we have an opportunity to talk about the color?
Yes.
And we'll have input to that.
Yes.
Okay.
So you'll have input going forward. Jay and Bonnie will be working with Sector 17 and Cali on the approved sketch to make the correct compositional changes as far as balance and the reality, you know, in relation to the photo, and that problem of having the dead end into the barn, and the color overlay, both.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Well, it has been
Jennifer.
deemed not a conflict of interest. I want it to be on the record that my husband works for Zamzows.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think thank you for your clarity on that, and I think we're fine going forward. But good. Thank you. So, if that's a full discussion from Commission, Genesis, did you want to chime in on this at all before we make a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
discussing with Hillary, so I hadn't seen the colored rendering. So
Mm-hmm.
did come before council last week, I think, the week before. And we did have a little bit of input that we said, which was, well, first of all, it was like, is it going to be color? Because in black and white, none of us liked it. And we wanted to add a child somewhere. And somebody, I think, said making the barn bigger or something like that. So Hillary's in the middle of conversations with those things on, with the artist. And then, of course, the Zamzows have to approve any changes like that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say, sorry, when I was on the phone, I haven't seen this. And was there two?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
This one's the one that we kind of like the best.
So I guess in my mind, I just pictured it a color painting, not a black painting with color in the background.
I don't think that it will be a black painting with color in the background. They said that they'd be adding highlights and dark tones, so I think it would be essentially mimicking some of these colors in addition to having white and black kind of on top of that or integrated in it. So I wasn't sure if you meant like if it was going to be black and white with some color back there, but that was my understanding, is that they would add blacks and whites to this and use these color overlay to guide the MDC colors for downtown.
Oh, so this has reference to the MDC, the color scheme for the entire downtown urban development area. Oh, well, that brings some perspective. And so what you're saying is that, okay, we'll just use the cow for instance. So the cow in this particular, not that we're accepting this particular color spray, but the cow would be kind of following in color that shade, and then it would move in. Is that what you're saying?
That's my understanding of.
Okay. So if that's the case with this particular thing that we're looking at, then this yellow spray, obviously they'd be probably using more black there because you can't use shades of yellow. That would just blend completely in. So maybe that would bring out the barn more. And by making that shift to be more like the photograph, bringing that road down to make it go by the barn, the barn would be essentially made taller than that by that, because oh, it went away. Well, Oh, so the road just kind of disappears. The road is too prominent in that other one. It gets a lot narrower, like to a pencil. It's kind of the shape of that road going back is kind of like a pencil. So it's very small, making the barn look larger in this photo, just by making the adjustment to the road.
It's just a perspective thing.
It's perspective. Well, it kind of brings me back around to, are these material changes to the approved picture, or is this a process of going forward and making the correct adjustments to an approved piece of art? I kind of wish we could see another rendering.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Jay.
with the changes, with the color in here, it's kind of throwing me off because I'm still not quite sure how they plan on integrating blacks and whites, and if like the cow's going to be black and white-ish with the colors faded in the whites and just pure black or darker.
Right.
You know, I'm having trouble visualizing it, but we're not really voting on the color, so I'm trying to keep that at a distance.
Right.
But yeah, I have kind of the same question. Are we able to make these changes after we approve this as it stands now?
And I think what Callie likes is the actual physical photo and the features that they've pulled out of it. The Zamzo family has approved that. And so these changes that these changes in perspective for the composition are adjustments as opposed to changes in design. Has anyone talked to Callie about the addition of a child?
The same email that I sent to Sector 17 went to
Right.
Callie as well, and she has not chimed in. She also hasn't chimed in about the colors yet either.
Okay. Well, I think what we need to do then, if this is the photo that they want to go from, is what Callie has approved. And this is their rendering of that photo. It needs some adjustments and possibly amendments to what we need to do is have a little bit more discussion, but we could give an approval to this with the amendments that would come from input from Jay and Bonnie. But I think we need to reapprove it after the changes have been made. And it sounds like we've got a lot more input that needs to be addressed. Because I think the addition of a child is a material change to the design. And in my mind, that would be a change that would be outside of what we would be approving today. The color is not material as far as what is in the elements that are in the original photo, but it certainly is a consideration to make sure that it's going to look right. And when it's huge, it's hard to imagine unless you're a visual artist and understand what making things big means. I mean, I don't know. Yes, Genesis.
I know I don't have a vote in this, but now that I'm seeing both renderings and thinking about, I really like this abstract one personally more. I think that it is kind of busy, so that the actual painting would have to be darker in order for you to be able to see it through. But this one looks more like a piece of art to me, where the other one just looks like some stripes in the background. That's just my 2 cents.
Are you talking about the color overlay of this? It doesn't make it, I like the combination because it's a combination of abstraction and reality. And I think that's interesting to look at, which is part of the point. But, so for our meeting purpose here today, Emily, can we have are we, once again, I'm coming back to our original question. If we have input from Jay and Bonnie going forward as to these compositional changes and the overlay, and by composition I mean perspective, not what's in it, can we approve this design today with knowing that we're going to make some changes going forward?
Madam Chair, yes, I think the task before the Arts Commission today is, can you recommend that this overall concept move forward? And if you empower Jay and or Bonnie to work with the artists to offer this input, it really does come down to the Zamzo's comfort and what they want to do. But if it's compositional, that's value that the commissioners can provide to the artist.
Okay.
To me, moving the road and adding a child and things like that are not material. They're really kind of amendments to the overall design. So if this became a giraffe instead of a cow, I would say that's material, but really if you're making little changes and changing the colors and the movement of that overlay, it's not really a legal question, but in my opinion, that's not material. So you could empower Jay and Bonnie to work with the artists to make that final decision.
Okay.
So.
All right. Is there any further discussion from the board? Gretchen? Just want to make sure that you're...
Madam Chair, it's still really hard to understand what people are saying, but I feel comfortable moving forward with approving the design, and I don't feel as comfortable giving too much direction to the artists myself. I've had an opinion on the prisms, the colors, but I'm happy with the design, and I'm still confident with the artist's skills to move forward with the design as it stands.
Okay. If there's no further input from or discussion from the commission, we would entertain a motion to approve the design and to empower Ryan and Bonnie to move forward and work with the artists to come to the final. Yes.
Madam Chair, that's Jay.
Jay, sorry. I've really got to stay in town for more than a day at a time and get some rest.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the overall concept to move forward with Bonnie and Jay's input with the artist for the final decision of the mural.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Jay and Bonnie, for being willing to work with the artists, and we will be moving on to the Dairy Days Art Show.
Thank you, guys. The Dairy Day, or the events committee, met in late February, and we were discussing the pros and cons of moving forward and hosting another Dairy Days art show. And as conversation continued, I'm not going to be in town that Saturday. I'm getting married, so I'm not making any changes to that plan. I don't think Bonnie was going to be in town. Stephanie wasn't going to be available, and Randy B's also out of town. That all on that same Saturday. And so in the midst of debating these pros and cons, I don't want to speak for the events committee, but it seemed like MAC needed to make a decision. Do we try to move forward with Dairy Days without any of these people here, missing a lot of your commission, or do we focus our resources and those artists that we've used before for Dairy Days for Art Week and to enhance Art Week overall?
Can I ask what day it's planned for this year?
June 23rd.
Okay, thank you.
So I sent out a kind of brief survey, a 4-question survey to artists that participated in Dairy Days. I only had 8 responses back, so I don't really know how valuable that is. But I did have a few good conversations with artists, essentially going through the same conversation that we had with the events committee. There's a lot of other art festivals and art events happening around that same time, and it does put a time constraint not only on professional artists, but also on amateur artists that can't always create enough work to restock everything to do another festival. So I had about 4 people. I sent it out to my entire group. It was about 30 vendors. About 4 of them said, I want to do Dairy Days again for sure. And some of those 4 and some additional said they'd be interested in doing Dairy Days and Art Week. And then some said they were just interested in Art Week. So it's really not, the data wasn't valuable enough for me to bring it before you today to say, like, this is what it looks like. I can pull it up, but essentially those are your considerations, is can we get enough artists here? Also, we're back into March again, where we haven't been soliciting artists, so we're back where we were 2 Dairy Days ago, trying to get artists on a short notice, and force this into working, or focusing max efforts on developing Art Week further.
I think that Dairy Days, I really think that one thing about Dairy Days is that as far as trying it out as a new fit for the Arts Commission, I think we really put our best foot forward on it. And so I think that when we tried it, we did our best. We put a lot of resources to it, both volunteer and it's quite a large volunteer schedule. Every it's a long day, and so we had a lot of coverage. In my opinion, I think we really gave it a good try. I think we have seen the best that we can do, but it was a struggle for the same things that she says. We had a hard time getting enough artists to be there because of the busy time, and I'm also going to be out of town. So this year we'd be down to just a skeleton staff, and I also found that it confused the public a little bit, because when they would come into the park, they thought that we were in charge of Dairy Days, and they would come up and ask for information about other events. And so it also kind of pulled the focus away a little bit from the people who are in charge of it and deserve credit for producing the events. And so I thought that it was a little bit of confusion that way too. I would be, given the fact that we have no resources this year, with so many absences with our commission, and myself included in that, and the fact that we really gave it our good shot, but it hasn't been as successful and as cohesive to our strategic plan as developing Art Week. I would suggest that we focus our efforts on Art Week and make that just an even more amazing event than it already is, and stop with the Dairy Days. We could maybe suggest another group that may be interested, such as the Children's Farmers Market may want to have a presence there, or another. Is that bad to say? Is that not possible?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Well, they just actually the Parks Department came to us last night, and the Children's Farmers Market is not going to be the Children's Farmers Market anymore.
Oh.
It's now Meridian Main Street Market.
Oh.
It is still going to be here, and we're still going to have a strong presence of children farmers and gardeners.
Okay.
But we're now opening it up to more people, hoping to make it a bigger market that will someday take over Main Street.
Yay! Okay,
So
well, good.
And that will already be happening. Their first weekend is like that weekend. I think that might be their. I think that's our first weekend here. So there's no way you're going to get them there. But not a bad idea to have another group. Talk to, like,
Right.
how about the watercolor guys or something? Somebody.
Yeah, it
know
might
a
be
lot of people.
that someone else may have a more cohesive stake in the event to add that. But, well, I'm glad they're going to be there. So that's good. Wow. Okay. So discussion from. I know it's hard for Jay and Jessica and Jennifer, because you guys have never been to the event. Dairy Days is a big all-week downtown celebration, and then there's all sorts of things. There's cows that go up. It's just fun. And then we added an art fair to Story Park. For a couple of years, we've done that, and there's a carnival. I mean, it's an old city celebration that's been done, and it's produced by the dairy what's the name of the producing body, Dairy?
Dairy Board?
Dairy Board.
Yeah,
The
Dairy Board and Stock Show is their official name.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Jennifer.
I have a question. If we were to pass this year on this event, would we lose momentum or interest, either from the community or from the artists?
I really don't. I think because it's been such a, it hasn't really, it's just never really gelled. It's never really set. I don't see us losing. What? No, Genesis.
We're having too loud of a sidebar conversation. I mean, yeah, I think you would lose momentum because it's going to be like starting over, but you don't have a whole lot of momentum to lose. So it may not be as huge of a loss as giving up stopping to do something that is like major. Like if we stop doing the parades and then start doing the parades again, you lose a lot of momentum because they're the big deal. Yeah. I think at this point, yes, you would lose it, but it's probably not the end of the world, not that huge of a thing. But I would say if you're going to take it up again, be prepared to, you got to keep going to make it successful. And most things start out small. I mean, Art Week the first year was pretty small, and it just gets a little bit bigger every year.
Yeah.
But I think that you guys, you do take, last year especially, I think a lot of volunteer hours, and my concern watching and being part of a lot of that was spreading yourselves too thin and getting burned out. And so I think it's important for you to take a step back and pick the things that you really want to focus your time and energy on. So.
Thank you. And like she said, we will lose some momentum, but since we're only 2 years in, it's not, and it won't be a terrible, it'll be felt less because of that. Any other comments?
I agree. I agree. I think that putting the efforts into making Art Week a bigger event, maybe it has more benefit to the community. And perhaps if Hillary has the names of especially the people that responded, they might be involved with one of the art associations, and it may be worth asking their affiliate if they would be interested. I think Napa and Treasure Valley Art Guilds have merged or are in the process of. So that's a big organization if that happens, and they may want to do something art with Dairy Days.
And I agree. Yes.
I was gonna, the Treasure Valley Arts Alliance was the name that came to mind for me too, and Nampa's going to be combining with them, and I thought they would be most likely to maybe jump on board and take over that aspect of it. I think we're going to run a pretty dry really quickly because I'm going to be out of town that week too.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Everybody's gone.
Yeah, and I think that so resources-wise, as far as the commission goes, it seems like a really busy time, especially this year. And I also think that what we've found, from what Hillary has found with her research and reaching out, that it's a it's kind of a saturated festival time for artists as well. And so having a group of artists, visual artists, maybe headed up, they might better know what resources are available to them without taking a lot more of Hillary's time to research and try to reach out, because they're more in direct connection with that community. So I think that it would be really nice for us to maybe reach out and just make these, the plein air or the Meridian. Has that merge happened yet? Or is it just the merge with Meridian and Nampa?
It's in the early stages right now.
Okay.
Nampa will be going away, the name of it anyway, from my understanding, and then the Treasure Valley Artists Alliance will be controlling the majority of it, but I think it's going to happen over the next year.
Okay, because it'd be nice to be able to pass the torch, so to speak, since we have kind of started it. If we could get someone else interested in running with it, then we could still feel good about the groundwork that we've set forward to have an art fair as part of Dairy Days, while being able to focus our resources on something that makes more sense to us. So let's let's keep that in mind, that as if we do choose to not continue, that we reach out to a couple of these other art societies and kind of say, hey, we started this, you know, here it is, and maybe maybe the best way to go about that would be to give some of these references for other resources to the dairy board and say, we can't continue with it, but here are some resources that we've put together for you to contact if you would like to continue with your art fair.
Madam Chair, I have an
Yes.
idea to float.
Jessica, yes.
Maybe not for this year, but maybe for future years. Depending on how much interest there is, you know, at the beginning we talked about the children's art competition, and maybe that would be the Dairy Days would be a good opportunity to have kind of a children's art show. Maybe this year it's not enough time to plan it, but maybe in future years that might be an idea for a way to have an art presence there, but not, and give kids an opportunity so that they don't just have this West Ada competition. They have other opportunities to show their art, especially, you know, high schoolers who are hoping to go on beyond high school and continue their art. Maybe that would be good, but not just high schoolers. I mean, it could be younger kids too who have a ton of talent. That could be a way for them to show off their work, and that way we leave, you know, the people who make money through art and who do this on a regular basis to be involved in some of the other opportunities and make this more of a sort of a community children's art show.
That's a great idea, or even if whoever takes it over, even if they had part of it be like an education outreach, because it'd be great if there was a couple of booths available for the children's art, but there were professional artists there, because then you have these young artists mixing with the adults who are there that can mentor them a little bit. I love that idea. So let's maybe pass that on as well when we give resources, should we decide not to continue. Pass that on, that the West Ada art competition also be included in the call to artists. That's a great idea. I love that. Thank you. So our decision that we need to make today is whether or not we are going to continue to produce the art show for Dairy Days.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Gretchen.
Hi. So for me personally, as a commissioner, it's a really hard time of year from this whole season right now through like August for my life, work, and personal. So Art Week I've always been able to contribute more to. So personally, I feel less able to make a contribution to Dairy Days. And I would say that if our commission doesn't have someone with the passion and capacity to run it, it does not make sense for us to make that commitment at this time, but rather I like the idea of trying to find another group or groups within the community to keep it going, because to me that's a better strategic direction to take in building capacity and supporting the arts community without necessarily taking it on operationally as a commission.
Well said. Well said. Input from other arts commissioners? If not, we would entertain a motion.
I move that we,
Emily?
Madam Chair, I don't think you
Yes, Emily.
actually need a motion. I think the consensus is clear, so.
Okay. So we will...
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. We will work to find another source to take over, and we will move away from that and focus our much more available resources towards Art Week. All right, so there's nothing to add to discussion. We are at my favorite motion.
Madam Chair, I
Yeah.
move to adjourn. Is that what you meant?
Yes. All in favor?
aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thanks for joining us, Gretchen. I know it's hard on the phone, but thank you for hanging in there. And thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Well, it's interesting that your very first